Can you imagine, on a snow-covered Eastern Front, a soldier about to pull the trigger, and suddenly, someone notices the school shoes peeking out from under his uniform? Would you fire, or freeze in the face of the truth that the target in your sights isn't an enemy, but a 16-year-old boy? Today's story is about that exact moment. If you don't watch this video until the end, you'll miss what happens next. The village is little more than a smudge on a map. A dozen stone houses, a church with its steeple half shot away, a frozen field crusted with dirty snow. It could be Saxony, Thuringia, anywhere in eastern Germany in the last winter of the war. The date on an officer's report would read March 1945, but time here is measured in artillery echoes and the distance between patrols. Smoke hangs over the roofs. The civilians are gone, fled hiding in cellars, or simply too scared to show their faces. The only movement in the main street is a single gray figure. From a distance, it looks like any other German infantryman, steel helmet, long greatcoat, rifle held awkwardly across his chest. Closer up, the disguise starts to slip. The greatcoat is two big cuffs flapping over narrow wrists. The helmet keeps sliding down over his eyes. At the bottom, where the coat swings open, you can see the truth: thin calves and worn civilian trousers, and on his feet, scuffed school shoes that were never meant for war. His name is Karl. He is 16. 3 months ago, he was still sitting in a classroom in Leipzig, chewing the end of his pencil while a teacher droned on about Latin verbs. Then, the air raids came night after night. Then the Hitler Youth leader's summons in the schoolyard. Then the shouting about total war and defending the fatherland. No one asked him if he wanted to go. By late 1944, the Reich doesn't have the luxury of asking the Volkssturm. The People's Storm has been called up, boys barely shaving, and men who already have grandchildren handed rifles and armbands, and told to stop the Red Army and the Americans. The Hitler Youth, once a place for camping trips and marching songs, is now a recruiting ground for last-ditch infantry. Karl's training consisted of a few days on a frozen field. How to hold a rifle, how to take cover, how to shout Heil Hitler with conviction. What his instructors never taught him was what to do when the front disintegrated, and he found himself alone in a dead village, told to hold the crossroads against an enemy army. His officer has disappeared off to check other positions, he said. No one has come back. Now Karl stands in the middle, Freibetensen line Floti, of the street, fingers numb around his rifle, trying not to think about how quiet it is. The quiet breaks first to the west. Boots crunch on frozen mud, a tank engine grumbles low and steady. An American patrol edges into the village, rifles up, eyes raking the windows and doorways. They're from an infantry regiment that's been on the road since Normandy. Their Sergeant Joe has seen hedgerows in France, the Hurtgen Forest's misery, the Ardennes in winter. He's seen white flags used as traps and teenagers in Hitler Youth armbands fire Panzerfausts from cellar windows. The doctrine is simple now: hesitate and you die. As they round a bend by the gutted church, Joe spots the shape in gray, standing alone in the street ahead. Helmet, rifle, German. His body acts on reflex. The butt of his M1 Garand comes up to his shoulder. The front sight settles center mass on the figure's chest. His finger finds the trigger, starts to squeeze. Behind him, other rifles swing into line. The tank's turret grinds, barrel dipping, frabatang. On the far side of the village, at the same moment, another sound approaches. Voices in Russian. The metallic clatter of a PPS-41 being shifted in a gloved hand. A Red Army patrol advances from the east, moving between barns and shed walls. Pala Taxi 41, Bikola Dalbaxis. A Proant Karbedis offer the Prand, for Mijis Vensix. Pippersnoer Tharblen Woolder toward the peace. For Twinnerwool Bladders on Wall the 2 vols. Kradstozes Vardy had a Protolder PO2 vols. Prachi Kilda Tilzang. At its front walks Sasha. He is 18 and older than his years. Drafted at 17 from a village near Smolensk, he's marched west through burned-out towns with names he'll never remember. He's stepped past mass graves outside Ukrainian villages, past charred beams where houses once stood. For him, German is not an abstract enemy, it is a scar running all the way back to 1941. But he has also seen something else. Prisoners of war who look scarcely younger than he is. A dead Hitler Youth boy in a ruined street in Minsk, fingers still wrapped around an anti-tank weapon too big for his frame. As he comes around a corner into the village's main street, Sasha sees the gray figure ahead. Instinct snaps his submachine gun up. Before he can call out, he hears something over his right shoulder. The metallic clack of an American rifle being shouldered. The grind of a tank turret slewing. He glances sideways and sees unfamiliar helmets. A white star on armor. Men aiming across the street. Patatsenks Ropskaritswav. In that instant, there is a rough triangle in the snow. Americans on one side, Soviets on the other, and a terrified German boy in the middle. Patatank Karl's eyes flick wildly from one set of muzzles to the other. He has never been this close to an American. He has never seen a Red Army soldier outside of propaganda posters. He is 16, freezing and certain he is about to die. On Joe's side of the street, the sight picture is perfect. Centered chest, still target. His finger tightens, Valentin's Wallaching. On Sasha's side, something in him rebels. He doesn't know English, not really. A few words from newspapers used as packing in supply crates. Scraps picked up from a liaison officer's curses. But he knows enough for this. He throws out his free hand, palm toward the Americans, and shouts with everything in pin him. Nestrelii, don't shoot. On Malchik, he's just a boy. The cry rips across the frozen air and hangs there between the bullet and its target. Joe hears the shout as if it's been amplified. He doesn't understand the first words, but he doesn't need to. The open hand, the urgency in the voice, and that single clear word. Boy, palator taxif, roller voice. For months, the war has taught him to see shapes, not faces. Helmets, coats, weapons. But now, with that one word lodged in his ear, the gray figure in his sights changes. It's as if someone adjusts a focus knob. The iron helmet, the wool collar, the rifle stock stay the same, but behind them he sees the smooth skin where stubble should be, the too thin neck, the hands that tremble so hard the rifle barrel wobbles. He sees absurdly his kid brother Eddie back in Ohio, 16 lanky writing letters about high school baseball and girls, and how weird it is to shave. His finger is in mid-squeeze. All the training, all the hard-earned lessons of ambushes and booby-trapped surrenders scream, finish it. Instead, something else quieter, stubborn pushes up through the noise. He's just a kid. Ceasefire, Joe snaps voice hoarse. The order jolts through the American line. Rifles hold, no one quite lowers their weapon, but fingers ease. The tank gunner hesitates and takes his face off the sight. On the far side, Soviet muzzles remain up, but they too are still. For a moment, the whole war pauses in one broken street. Carl feels the change before he understands it. The world had narrowed to the Despite the cold, the rifle feels like a living thing trying to jump out of his grip. Without making a conscious decision, he lets it go. The weapon drops, clatters on the frozen road, and skids a little. The sound is so loud in the silence that everyone flinches. Very slowly, as if moving through thick water, Carl raises his empty hands above his head. His helmet slips down, a tear spills out from under the brim and tracks along the dirt on his cheek. His lips move, "Bitte, please." The plea doesn't need translation. Ron Rose Tram. A Soviet lieutenant steps out from his side of the street, an American lieutenant from the other. They walk toward the center, boots crunching in the snow, weapons slung but hands ready. They stop within a few paces of each other, the boy between them like something fragile on a table. For a second they simply stare, two products of rival systems told to distrust each other already, yet tied together by orders from far above the Allies. Trompendeges, Amerikansky. The Soviet officer asks, tapping his own chest, then pointing. The American nods, once Rusky, he says, approximating the word, gesturing back. They both glance at the boy. The Soviet shrugs, half a question, half an offer, "You take him." The American hesitates. He knows what happens to prisoners sent east, at least in rumor. Columns marching into a gray distance, years of labor under watchtowers, survival, depending on luck and a strong back. American POW camps are no paradise, but they're regulated, finite. The war will end soon. The prisoners will go home eventually. He nods. "We'll take him," he says, mostly to himself. Then louder with a gesture. "Come on, kid. For that." The boy doesn't understand the words, but the tone is clear. He lowers his hands a little, looking from face to face in disbelief, then shuffles toward the American's legs, unsteady. As he passes, the Soviet lieutenant reaches into his pocket. His fingers come out with a small treasure, a sugar cube slightly gray from the wool it's been wrapped in. He presses it into Carl's palm. Carl stares at it, then at the man's face. For years, the posters and newsreels have told him Russians are less than human. The eyes looking back at him are tired, wary, but not monstrous. They belong to someone not much older than he is. The Russian says, "Tribes to Migi Showernai Maitu." One word, in a low voice. "Jivy live." He gives the boy a small push toward the Americans, then turns away. Private Tansett. Sasha watches all this from a few meters back, heart pounding as if he's just sprinted. He keeps his PPSH low now, barrel pointed at the snow. As the German boy moves past with the Americans, their eyes meet for a second. It's an awkward searching, wide advancing look, but something passes between them. A flicker of recognition that, stripped of flags and languages, they are almost the same age, thrown into the same grinder from opposite directions. Then the American patrol with its new prisoner peels off toward the west. The Soviet patrol continues east, deeper into Germany. Within minutes, corners and ruined walls hide them from each other. The intersection where a bullet didn't fly is empty again. For Carl, the war ends not with a bang, but with paperwork. He is processed through an American field camp, one more ragged lancer among thousands. The guards who take his details raise eyebrows at his birth year but say nothing. In the barbed wire compound, he meets veterans who fought in Russia, in France, and Italy, men who talk now that it's over with, a frankness that would have gotten them shot months earlier. He starts to hear other stories of camps in the east, of cities in ruins, of crimes committed in his country's name that were never printed in Der Völkische Beobachter. Shame creeps up his spine, mingling with relief at simply being alive. Vermutzing plaid of youthing tang. Kromef mortis fekels bonplaven trastaddelank labelanokadertselanon. Mudsdorfer sigli twaitanaves, the sicken pridesful of collectors. With Sorvorg. Years later, as a gray-haired grandfather, he will tell his grandchildren about that day. He will describe the snow, the tank, the shouting in a language he barely understood. But most of all, he will remember the hand that came up between him and death, and the phrase distorted by accent but unmistakable. Don't shoot, he's just a boy. Freibetankslovational. For Sasha May brings the official end. Berlin falls, the Reich surrenders. He celebrates, or tries to, in a city of ruins and hungry eyes. Freibetrampet. In the years that follow, he works in a factory, raises children in a cramped Soviet apartment, lines up for bread. When people ask about the war, he has a stock selection of stories. The correct ones about heroism and sacrifice. But sometimes when the evening is quiet and a grandchild asks a different kind of question, did you ever save someone? He tells a small story about a nameless German boy in boots too big, and about an American who understood one shouted word. Joe goes home too, back to a street where flags hang from porches where people slap his back and call him a hero. At night he dreams of shell bursts and sudden ambushes, but once in a while another image surfaces. A skinny kid in a gray coat and school shoes frozen in his sights. Roboted. In bar conversations about the Reds, about the next war, everyone already seems to be expecting. He doesn't suddenly become a friend of communism, but he also doesn't forget the Russian voice that cut through the noise and made him see a boy instead of a target. Share this video, and in the comments write, "War steals childhood."